Do you work, do you study, or do you have a passion for automation? If you do, the place to be this week in Detroit, Michigan, or anywhere really on the planet is Automate. 25,000 attendees here this week, seeing all kinds of cutting-edge technology. We're going to learn about some of that technology on the AI front in just a moment. Just about every guest that we've had on so far, live streaming on YouTube, has brought up this whole idea of artificial intelligence, and we are going to speak to the heart of that market here on this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. I need to remind everybody that we are live streaming from the FANUC Education Pavilion here at Huntington Place. FANUC, of course, was founded in 1982 and boasts more than 1,500 employees here in North America working in customer service, engineering, finance, human resources, operations management, product development, sales, marketing. You have got to learn about FANUC if you're not familiar with that company. A great place to work because they are innovating the future of automation, and we're proud to be a part of their great presence here at Automate. My guest on this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast is going to be a fascinating one. Our listeners know that we talk all the time about artificial intelligence. We talk about machine learning. We use terms like classification learning and reinforcement learning and supervised learning and unsupervised learning and huge data sets and PyTorch and TensorFlow and all these different technologies that exist in the world of artificial intelligence. We're going to talk today with somebody that works with these types of technologies every single day. Sean Mitchell is our guest on the Tech Ed Podcast. Sean is the Vice President of Customer Success at Gather AI. You are going to be blown away by their technologies. I'm really, really excited, Sean, to have you on the Tech Ed Podcast. Thanks so much for carving out some time for us.
Matt, it's a pleasure to speak with you today. Super excited, and again, what an amazing venue that you guys have set up here.
Absolutely. We're just so excited to have you here. And the Tech Ed Podcast, of course, reaches to 106 countries, believe it or not, 43 different podcast platforms. And we're somewhere into the 100 teens, so 115 or so episodes that we've had so far. Each one of them fascinating in their own way, but I know that this one is going to be particularly fascinating given your engagement with artificial intelligence and applied AI in a really, really fascinating way. So as we're getting started, your company, Gather AI, has just an absolutely fascinating story in terms of the way that it originated, the technology that goes around it. So tell us a little bit about your technology and how the company came into being.
Definitely. So I'll start first with the technology. So effectively what we have is we have a series of fully autonomous drones that fly through our customers' warehouses, imaging every single pallet location. As they do so, what they're doing then is comparing directly with the warehouse management system. And they're confirming is the correct product in the correct location. As the drone's flying, what it's doing is it's actually going through and reviewing each image and using machine learning to actually determine, what's the barcode, reading the barcodes. It's using optical character recognition to actually read the text. We can also count cases. We can determine if a location is empty or populated. And from there, we can then go through and pull and then determine exactly, is something where it's supposed to be based on that warehouse management system.
It's amazing. I mean, so you literally, you think about a warehouse, a large distribution center, you've got drones flying around, and they're using all kinds of technology, acquiring data about what is actually in that warehouse. And so you think about the challenges historically, and as you know, I was in manufacturing for years and years. I can't tell you how many times I saw a forklift driver driving around a facility, taking a pallet off of a rack, bringing it down to the floor, looking at the traveler, figuring out what it was. Incredibly inefficient, incredibly time-consuming, frustrating as somebody who managed a manufacturing operation because you think that we would know where things were, and most of the time we did, but when you didn't, all kinds of challenges. And then you're making a part that you didn't think you had, or you're thinking that maybe something got removed from a warehouse and it's still there, and all the costs that comes along with that. What you're telling me is you're using 2 or 3 really cutting-edge technologies. Certainly drone technology is one of them. And then the whole way that you're using machine learning and artificial intelligence, machine learning, of course, being a subset of AI, to be able to track inventory. That's absolutely fascinating. Am I getting that right? Is that really what you're doing?
You're absolutely right. So effectively, we have 2 parts of the product. One is the autonomy that actually allows the drone to fly and navigate through the warehouse, do its path planning, determine where it is based upon a series of Aruco codes or little calibration markers. In addition to that, we also have then the ability to do image processing, right? We're really just a software and image processing company that actually is able to go through and take these images and say, okay, what is there and how do we derive value from that? And that's where we get into, using ML and AI to actually determine, what inventory attributes are actually there.
Well, and you mentioned, I guess didn't register right away. This isn't somebody sitting there with a remote control flying that drone around the way. This is a fully autonomous drone?
It's a fully autonomous drone. It goes through. All you need to do is tell it where you'd like to go. Let's say select 100 pallets, place it in the aisle, and it'll take off and it'll do its scan by itself.
But one of the questions I'm going to have in just a minute is why isn't everybody using this? I'm sure you ask yourself that same question, Sean, on a daily basis. But before we get into that, who comes up with this? I mean, where did this company come from?
So company came from the original co-founder. So it was Sankalp Arora, Gitesh Dubey, and Daniel Maturana out of Carnegie Mellon University.
Okay.
And so what they had done is they had actually been tasked with creating the world's first full-scale autonomous helicopter.
Okay.
And so Department of Defense had go through, create this large-scale helicopter. They could actually have passengers inside, fly through. It was all hands-free.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were able to do then is to use the sensor system, their sensor suite on the helicopter to actually go through and fly it autonomously and identify objects on the ground and say, hey, from this, we're able to effectively know exactly where it is and how to safely plan a path from point A to point B.
Huh.
From there, they said, okay, where can we use this technology? What is the next piece? And so it was miniaturize it and put it in the warehouse environment, because they realized that you may have 100,000 pallets in a warehouse, but you really don't know where 4 to 5% of them are at any given point. And so this was the most impactful way in which we could kind of create this technology and apply it to a direct human need.
Absolutely fascinating way of commercializing that technology, and I'm looking forward to learning about this as we go through the conversation. Sean, I want to dig a little bit deeper. It's so easy in this day and age to say, "Oh yeah, we use AI, we use machine learning. This is that's what it's using in order to classify a container, classify a product, to be able to read the barcode and so on." What's actually happening? I mean, where's that going? What's the back end of that look like?
Definitely. So we'll kind of decouple the two pieces, right?
Okay.
So first, there's the path planning environment, and so that's where where the drone is determining what is the most efficient way to get from point A to point B, and ensure that we're hitting every waypoint in between.
Sure.
And so effectively, what you've got then is you have that model where the drone is then going through and taking in sensor data to determine, based on my battery life, based on the location, and based on how much energy it's going to take to move up and down in the X, Y, and Z coordinates. How do we get there? And that's where you're going through and using AI to actually determine that path.
Sure.
And the most
Another
efficient
application, by the way, for the Cartesian coordinate system that we talk about all the time in automation and CNC.
Exactly. And I mean, for us, it's in our basic, it's in our basic hiring exam as well. Okay, cool. Do can you work in 6-axis?
Right. Yeah.
It's not just X, Y, Z. It's also roll, pitch, and yaw.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating. So keep going.
Definitely. So then the next half, this is where we're actually capturing the images of the inventory in the warehouse using the drone. And this is where, we're going through and doing direct comparison and having trained a machine learning model to actually go through and identify what is the text that we're looking for, what are the barcodes we're looking for, and utilizing that information to actually derive that value. So it is something where we're training the model to actually go through, and we've now had millions of warehousing images.
Sure.
So we now have this kind of, database that we can go through and know exactly what an empty pallet looks like. We can know exactly what, a barcode, an LPN, any of these things, and we can kind of derive value directly from that.
That's fascinating. So the back end platform from the AI and ML perspective, is that your software? Are you designing
That's our software. Yeah. So effectively the drones, everything, all the hardware is off the shelf, and we're purely a software company that's able to go through and actually use machine learning to derive. We're able to go through and actually confirm exactly what we're looking for based upon that ML stack.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, it's really a GPT application outside. We talk about chat GPT all the time, but you're really applying the GPT side of it. And so is it data scientists then that are training the algorithm to be able to...
Every day. It's all, and I think the only place in which we would differ from a chat GPT is we're working only in the visual
images,
media. So instead of coming out with text, we're coming out with images.
Right. But it's just a fascinating application. We hear about chat GPT all the same, and it's the same application, it's the same technology, or at least the same theory with a totally different application. So
absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say absolutely. And I think the more amazing things that we're able to do is even just from a single static image, we're actually able to determine what's in the foreground, what's in the background, and determine is a location empty or populated based upon just the difference of learning what these locations truly look like and training that model.
Now, you talk incredibly fluently and articulately about these really complex concepts like artificial intelligence and machine learning. I know you have a bit of a background in contract manufacturing, but how did you learn about all this stuff? Tell us about that.
No, of course. So my background is in mechanical engineering.
Okay.
That was where I went. I went to Cornell, got my mechanical engineering degree, and then immediately jumped into contract manufacturing.
Okay.
Did high precision optoelectronics for about 6 years or so, going through building, lasers, LiDAR units, transceivers, as well as SMT. And I think that was really where I first got some exposure to, to image-based AI.
Sure.
We were actually using an optical inspection tool
Okay.
which had a series of cameras where it would go through and you would take in every single PCBA, and before it went out for final inspection, it would image every board and create
Printed
a 3D
circuit board,
model.
by the way, right? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Printed circuit board assembly.
Yeah.
Would go through and it would image all the components and make sure everything was properly soldered onto the board before moving on from there.
Got it. So kind of the early applications of vision systems in the world of manufacturing and just in using them for quality control and obviously identifying failures and failure modes before you finish the product and so on. And then relying on that technology and the vast amount of data you're drawing from that to know what is a good part, what is a bad part, being able to identify without having to physically test every single PCBA as it's going through the process. That's fascinating. That leads you to this amazing career with Gather AI, where you've got this incredible opportunity to apply artificial intelligence. Really cool job you have, by the way. I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't argue with me there. So I think about this technology, and you think about, we could put a name on the big warehouse, right? Everybody knows who the big players are in the world of distribution and logistics. Are those the ones that are adopting this? Is this just for large companies? Tell me about that.
So we actually, for our customers, and again, we've got a number that allow us to share their names, and definitely check us out on the website.
Sure.
We'll have those demonstrated. But effectively, we're going from smaller mom and pops to large Fortune 500 companies.
Okay.
The values that come from having traceability in your warehouse are not determined by the size of the warehouse. It's really based on, do you have interest in going through and understanding the movement of your goods?
Yep.
And so, if at any day you need to know exactly where things are, and you kind of live and die based upon that inventory accuracy,
right,
you need this technology. That's the takeaway, right? Instead of having dozens of people walking around with scan guns and automated lifts, you can go through, you can have a single drone to do that operation and to shift that labor over to more value add tasks.
Absolutely.
Every day I ask, warehouse operators come to me and they go, hey, is this drone taking my job? I go, give it for a second. Think, could you go through and wave a magic wand and on this aisle know exactly where every misplaced piece of inventory is? And after that, go and spend your day fixing problems as opposed to checking known good product. And everyone says, I'd love that. That would be my dream. And I go, wonderful. Here you go. Here's your drone. Here's your pilot license. You're off to it.
Come on, think about that transition, right? So if I'm somebody who's a material handler, manufacturing, incredibly valuable in that role, and somebody who's driving a forklift, somebody who's using a tow motor, somebody who's using a pallet jack, however you're doing that, nothing wrong with a job like that. But what's more interesting, driving a reach truck around all day or getting to learn how to operate a drone?
So there's operate a drone, and I think that's a huge piece of it.
Right.
But the next level is, how are you actually adding back to the organization?
Yep.
And so the teams that are going through, that are conducting inventory control today, really are just a group of detectives, right? They're looking for the mistakes. They're making sure that everything's been put back in the right place so that their operation can move as efficiently as possible.
Exactly.
And so for them, if they could know immediately where all the mistakes are, they can spend their day fixing things. And it's the fixing things that really kind of drives value for them and excitement.
Exactly.
So one is, yes, you're going to be kind of a world-class autonomous drone, pilot, but at the same time, you're also going to be able to do, 15 to 30x what you were doing previously.
Absolutely. You're focusing on your highest and best use, which we talk about all the time in manufacturing, thinking about driving out the 7 deadly wastes, which I'm sure you're a principal or a disciple of, rather, as am I, in understanding how waste manifests itself in a manufacturing or distribution or logistics or really any environment. And you think about the technology driving out all of those forms and waste. So a couple questions in terms of how you tie into other manufacturing technologies. So first of all, it's one thing for me to know where my inventory is. I've got an MRP or an ERP system that is running kind of in the background that needs that information. Are you integrating with those types of software as well?
So all of our customers, to start with, we're able to go through and do a CSV exchange. That means you download a spreadsheet flat file, and are able to share that back and forth. And so the nice part is, for our customers, we're able to start on day one with no IT integration.
Sure.
And typically, for many of you users, I'm sure you've heard, oh, okay, you got to talk to the IT department. Wonderful. We'll book that 3 to 12 months out.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see in a year.
Exactly. And we're saying, okay, let's drive value for you today.
Yeah.
After that, then we can go through and find a API integration. We can do a two-way data flow.
Yep.
But at least to start with, all of our customers are sending over a CSV over SFTP or even over just an email alias, and that allows us to ingest all of this information and to go through and show them exactly, what is in your WMS today and what's really in your warehouse.
Got it.
And kind of highlight those exceptions.
And is the future then to, at some point, or maybe you're already doing it, but to start integrating with autonomous mobile robot platforms and being able to have these two technologies work together?
So for us, we're hardware agnostic, right?
Okay.
We're really just a computer vision company that happens to be really good at having, flying drones run around and kind of capture the information for us. So I think we're absolutely interested in moving to a world in which you have automated cameras or whatever it may be on forklifts immediately transacting the information or the inventory as it's moving.
Right.
So if you think about a forklift driver picks up a pallet, immediately it gets transacted in the system because he picked it up.
Yep.
It's the same principle. And so for us, there, the sky's the limit as far as who we could integrate with and work with in that
Absolutely.
space.
Well, and I just dream about a world where you would have, everybody, all the human capital working closer and closer to the technology. More invigorating job, more interesting job, requires a higher level skill, requires employer to pay them a higher level of compensation, right? So pretty good if you can acquire those skills, which is really important. We'll get into that in a little bit, but then you could really have a fully autonomous warehouse where you've got AMRs and AGVs transporting material and your technology figuring out where it is. I mean, that's just to dream about that is really, really fascinating at a time when in the world of manufacturing, we're constraining GDP nationally here in the United States because we can't find enough people. Here's a way of, to your earlier point, deploying the people in the area of their highest and best use where they can add the most value for the company in a really fascinating job and let the technology do figuratively and literally the heavy lifting of manufacturing. I just think that's so cool. The other application that I'm thinking about here, having a bit of a financial accounting background and spending time around financial audits, at the end of the year, all the bean counters, and I was one, so I can get away with saying that, were required to come into manufacturing operation. Somebody pulls a pallet off of a rack, they're going through and they're counting what's there, the whole thing. I mean, really, are we that far away from where we're not really even doing that anymore? And technology like yours can provide real-time attest services for a warehouse and manufacturer to be able to value inventory in real time. Is that where we're going?
No, absolutely. And I think that the capabilities there today, no question at all. You can use our system right off the shelf and it'd be ready to roll. I can tell you, back from my days of manufacturing, the two most dreaded letters that you ever get are PI, physical inventory.
Right. Yep.
Every single nut, every single bolt, every resistor needs to be counted in the entire operation.
Right.
And so anybody who has large palletized inventory, the beauty is today you're going through, you're moving to cycle counting.
Right.
You're going through, you're counting, and for those of your viewers that don't, live in the inventory control world,
right,
what you'll find that is cycle counting is where you're going through a little piece of the warehouse every single day. You're counting and moving from there, and that's really how we encourage everyone to use the drones. It's to go through and actually scan the inventory, and it may be 100 pallets, it may be 5,000 every day, and going through and moving one step at a time so that you have that high accurate understanding of your warehouse, so that when it comes time for an auditor to look at the books, here's the data record. Here's every single pallet. It has been read. It has been verified. It's been timestamped, and you have all of that ready to go. And I think our next challenge is just working with the auditors to make sure that they're happy with this data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And having worked in that world again, I mean, I could see just tremendous applications. The only thing worse than physical inventory is the inevitable inventory write-down that happens and hits your P&L at the end of the year when you thought you had $10 million worth of stuff and you find out you have $9 million, and all of a sudden that extra $1 million has to run through your income statement. Avoiding all that as well with real-time cycle counting using technology. I mean, we could go off on probably a tangent around that for a half an hour in and of itself, but we'll stick to the core technology, that being artificial intelligence, machine learning, drones. As I mentioned earlier, it seems like everybody should be adopting this. I mean, I can't imagine a reason not to. Do you get some pushback or some concerns about deploying drones in a facility?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's the same with any new technology and capability, right? It's how do you integrate this into your operation? Everybody's question is, well, who's going to run the drone? Who's going to do? And then once you get over the hump of starting to run the technology, you'll see that we can actually train somebody in under 30 minutes to run the drones.
No
right?
way.
It's super. Again, come over to our booth. I'll certify you as a pilot today.
Awesome.
But more important than that, it's going through and adopting how do you use the data back into your operation,
Right.
and that's the bigger thing. It's going from having an Excel spreadsheet with every single inventory item that's been scanned, and hopefully it's been scanned in the correct location, and going to having images, having a searchable database of every single location, and kind of having that traceability. And so the biggest hump is, how do you go and utilize all of this extra data? It's not about, hey, is there a question of the hardware or the cost or the safety? It's a question of how do we integrate this data into our system? And the companies that we've seen who have adopted quickly are the ones who said, hey, I love this. Let's move forward. Let's go through. Let's make sure purchasing has access. Let's make sure manufacturing has access. Let's make sure that inventory control has all of this at everyone's disposal. And from there, we don't charge by the seat. Everything we really believe that everybody should have access to this data, and that's been the biggest driver for us.
Absolutely. Well, and the biggest driver for ROI as well, right? I mean, you start thinking about the return. I'm not going to ask you, but I'm guessing deploying this technology isn't cheap, like any advanced manufacturing, advanced technology. There's a cost to that, and there's always going to be somebody who's signing the check that's going to say, okay, what's my payback period? For our listeners who aren't familiar, you're taking the cost of a new addition to your manufacturing operation or your warehousing operation, what have you, and dividing that basically into the overall cost reduction that comes from deploying that technology. And the quicker that you can get the data in the hands of the people that can improve process, the more you're going to reduce costs, the more you're going to be able to justify this upfront investment. And so I think the democratization of that data once the technology's been deployed is really, really a wise business model, and frankly, kind of a unique one.
Absolutely. And again, I've gone through and I've done webinars with some of my customers. Barrett Distribution is one of the most recent ones that we went through and did it. And again, I definitely recommend, go check out that webinar. But effectively, they were saying, hey, we're able to justify, reallocating 3 to 4 heads per facility that the drones are running in, only because of the operational efficiencies that are driven by the drones. Right. Knowing exactly where your inventory is at any given point was hugely impactful to the business. And Absolutely. I've seen that in all of our customers. Our drones go through and they actually, previous to us, what is it, Donata, the air cargo arm of Emirates Airlines, would go through and actually have 48-hour working hours every day of somebody scanning the inventory. So that means that we had 6 people
working full-time, just scanning. That's crazy.
They had 6 people working full-time, scanning inventory, confirming for 2,000 pallets exactly where everything is.
Right.
We were able to take that, hand one person 2 drones, and now they're able to do it in under 5.
Wow.
And so that's every single day, given it's air cargo, anything that gets left behind is means it missed its flight. And so the idea being they're able to turn over the warehouse incredibly quickly, and you're able to go through and like you said, democratize the data, make sure everybody has access, but also make sure that the entire organization can move more quickly and that your best people can be used in the places that are most needed. Yep. None of our customers have gone through and said, hey, we laid off this team. No, they said, hey, these are highly valuable skills that we have. Let's move them to other areas of the business where we're always trying to hire. We're always trying to find people. I mean, you even said, going through and there was a limitation of GDP because we can't find the right people.
There is.
This is how we find the right people. This is how we take the best people and make sure they're doing the most with their time.
Absolutely. And I mean, we have a huge limitation of GDP. I just had Aditash Padi, who's the managing director of McKinsey, on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we were spending some time together on his new book, The Titanium Economy, and that's one of the things that he said. It's not just that we've had 2.5 million jobs in manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, logistics go unfilled over the course of the last decade, but it's a huge cost nationally to, trillions of dollars of GDP that we've foregone because we haven't had the people. And it doesn't matter who you talk to in manufacturing. The challenge isn't, their biggest challenge is finding enough people to be able to run their manufacturing and logistics operations. I speak on this topic all the time. I'm a huge advocate and proponent for automation, and I used to get the question every time, are the robots going to take the job? And it wasn't even whether the question would come up. It was just how deep into the Q&A session was that question going to come up. I don't hear that anymore because I think people are starting to realize, look, we don't have enough people to do hardly anything in this country anymore, whether it's, hospitality or distribution or retail or manufacturing. So the challenge is being able to find ways to continue to produce despite the absence of talent, and your technology is doing exactly this. It fascinates me that you can learn to fly a drone and be certified in 30 minutes. That's just amazing. Would be curious, though, in terms of the technology side of what you're doing, and we think about education, and in as much as this is the Tech Ed podcast, it's all about preparing that next generation for opportunities in STEM, opportunities in advanced manufacturing and in other spaces. Tell me a little bit, Sean, about what we need to be teaching our students, not just in terms of flying the drone, but I think there's probably some important aspects of that, but in terms of deploying some of these advanced technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning.
So I think the beauty of the drone platform itself, and if I think about, if I put myself back into my educational years, really the beauty is it's the marrying of several different disciplines. Mm-hmm. So one is there's an amazing hardware component that comes to. I mean, actually just having a quadcopter or a tricopter that allows you to go through and build up this hardware system and learn how to use your hands, learn how to go through potentially 3D print the parts, go through, conduct maintenance, build it, improve it, make optimization. All of that can be done just through the hardware. You can, you can do
have a whole career just doing that,
exactly.
Right?
And again, I did my high school robotics team. The biggest thing for us was, okay, how do we make this a sound mechanical platform, right? That was my goal. I was, okay, I'm in charge of the drivetrain. How do I get this? And eventually I captained the team. But the biggest deal was, how do we make sure that this is as efficient as possible, as lightweight as possible? And a drone has an amazing platform just because you have to go through and optimize, everything from weight to also aerodynamics. You can go through, you can learn things like finite element analysis to go and try to see, okay, how do we make the system as efficient as possible? The next piece of it is the software, right? How do you program it? How do you fly it? How do you make sure the correct motor controllers are going through? How do you encode it? And really look at the system from an electrical standpoint of when I say go, what happens, right? And how do I make sure that each motor is rotating correctly? There's a lot of physics involved, and again, that's a great opportunity for students to learn, just
for sure.
how does the drone come together? And the final part is, what do you do with the data at the end, right? That's where Gather has really come in is, if you're looking at AI and growth and everything, you now have a wonderful image capturing platform.
Yep.
How do you utilize the system to go through? And this is where, getting into learning more about ChatGPT and ancillary technologies like that really allow you to utilize your filming and kind of make sure that you're able to learn how to how to leverage AI.
Right.
I think it was hilarious. One of my employees went through and I had them, hey, can you make this RFQ document? This is my bread and butter for manufacturing. I gave them some pointers and they sent me something back. It was definitely a bit thin. And so I gave them some feedback. I sent it back, and the next day I had this beautiful RFQ document. I said, "Oh, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted. It's 5 pages long. You've got your pictures in there."
Right.
And a week later, I found out he had done it on ChatGPT.
No way.
I wasn't mad. I was over the moon. I was like, "This is the best thing." Like,
yeah, because you got it done in half a day instead of a week, right? Yeah.
He got it done in minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. They just loaded it in the system and came
Sure.
back, and that's where the students can really learn. Don't fear the AI. Learn how to work with it, because the jobs are going to require it.
No question. And I think the fear part of it comes in with some of the generations after our young students, because they're willing to dive in and check it out, and I think are as excited as I am about the future of artificial intelligence and machine learning. You think about all these convergences that you're talking about. We used to talk about back in the day, electrical versus mechanical, and we have electromechanical, and that's exactly what you're talking about when you're thinking about AC/DC circuits. You've got some relay control, you've got a bunch of discrete I/O that's going on, inputs and outputs into a microprocessor of some sort that's gathering all this data on the system. Then you've got all your principles of flight aspects and all your your aeronautical engineering aspects of the product. And if that's not enough, now we've got to figure out how do we program that microprocessor, and then how do we connect it to the cloud? How do we gather the data? What's our platform for data acquisition? And then how are we going to use software to figure out what I call the informationable data, because the vast majority of the data that we gather isn't usable or doesn't add value. We got to discern the parts that actually drive performance and drive improvement. And the work that you're doing is really every single one of those aspects. It really speaks to the importance of systems thinking and teaching that, right?
Absolutely. And again, I think these aren't discrete parts. This is part of a bigger whole.
Right.
And I think every day, if we're looking back at the Gather product, because that's where I live, that's what I think about every single day.
Right.
How do we stitch these things together? How do we make sure that we're providing one cohesive solution so that we're solving human problems, right? It's not as though we say, hey, well, here's a hardware team over here, there's a software team over there, there's an iOS, and you kind of break. No, you got to think about it as one complete system.
Yep. And
when you teach it, that's what you have to understand. I mean, I think I was super fortunate for my, going through mechanical engineering, which is today less mechanical and more systems engineering.
Right.
You get a taste of everything to at least have an appreciation of what you're off to do.
Absolutely.
And to help stitch all of the ideas together and make sure that you can have a more cohesive whole. And that's exactly what students need today is to really get a taste of everything,
right?
And to understand, okay, how does even if I'm only helping from one avenue, what do I help to make the bigger whole?
Absolutely, yeah. Even if you're just focusing on one element of that system and becoming a specialist in that specific element, we'll always need people doing that as well. It really is how do all these things interact together and create a final product, and to your point, improve the human experience and make humanity better for it. And that's just absolutely fascinating space that you're in, and you get to do that every day. You also get the view on a lot of different trends that are taking place, both in technology and probably economic and global political and so on. What is a trend you would point to, Sean, that we should have our eyes on as we look to the future of technology, manufacturing, logistics, distribution, and so on?
Well, I think I hate to kind of beat on the same drum I think that you've been doing consistently, but it's AI.
Yeah.
If you can't go through the news without seeing ChatGPT pop up, you can't go through without seeing, hey, how is this system optimized by AI? I really think it's the growth in this capability of kind of creating a learning model.
Yep.
And today, I mean, our bread and butter is based upon, how do we leverage our AI capability to go through and derive and help our customers.
Absolutely.
And so, across the board, I think you're going to see more products that have been enhanced by AI. You're going to see, better responses. I'm hopeful that the world is going to be a better place thanks to AI as opposed to the alternative.
Yeah, no, I think it will be, and I mean, there aren't any guarantees, right? And it's I actually gave a speech on this last week, and it really is it's like any other tool, whether it's nuclear technology, whatever, you can use it for good or you can use it for evil, and as long as people of conscience have control and knowledge of what that technology is, then there's reason for optimism, right? As soon as we quit. Somebody's always going to be figuring this out, and unless people who mean to do good, as long as those individuals don't stop working on the new technologies, don't stop understanding how AI is going to transform our world, is just one example. Then I think there's a lot of reason to be excited. I think my bigger question is, as we go on and we have AI and automation that does more and more of our life. I mean, think about cooking our food and mowing our lawn and writing our term papers, or for that matter, putting together our RFQs, or whatever it is. What is our purpose in life, and what do human beings, when we've got all this incredible free time and a standard of living that's been unforeseen at any time on this planet, how do we continue to have a purpose and get up every day? So that's one of the questions that I have. So two more questions for you. In terms of having a purpose, you must have an incredibly purpose-driven team of people at Gather AI. Tell us a little bit about what the workforce looks like. What are the kinds of jobs? How many people are they? What are they doing?
Absolutely. Sorry, I was getting ready to answer the big existential question of what do we do?
Well, if you got the answer to that, we'll put you on the spot with that one.
No, that's why I was on the spot. I'm thinking, I'm like, okay,
oh my goodness, what's my purpose? Yeah.
No, I mean, okay, I'll take a swing at it. But effectively, I think human beings have always been capable of utilizing the tools around them.
Right.
And I think all we're doing is improving and finding better tools.
Yeah.
And I think we can only see that, we can do good or we can do evil with these tools. But effectively, I believe that, we're at no different place than any other, kind of revolutionary new tool set came out. And that's at least how I sleep at night.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm with you. I mean, there's plenty to worry about, but I'm more excited than I am worried.
Absolutely. Yeah. Switching gears back to my team. So today, Gather AI, still a growing company. So we have 36 employees around the world. A lot of our headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. However, myself included, there's a lot of the team that is remote.
Yep.
And really, our thought was, let's find, and this grew out of the pandemic.
Yep.
I originally I was advising for Gather, and I was like, hey, February of 2020, I'm coming on full time, and all of a sudden,
timing perfect, yeah.
Sankalp, our CEO, calls and he goes, maybe now is not the best time for you to give up your health care and everything else.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you continue to moonlight? And I said that'll be great. But
sure.
But the amazing thing was that we were able to create this distributed team and find the best people wherever they are.
Awesome.
And to allow them to kind of work and contribute around the country, but also around the globe.
Might not have been able to do that if not for the pandemic.
Absolutely not. No, it really changed our business and kept us way more efficient. So I have a team, and my team is in charge of customer success and what we call customer operation.
Yep.
And so that's everything from deploying the technology. Mm-hmm. It's also ensuring that we're driving value for our customers. And so what that means then is understanding what is the problem statement and how do we attack that? How do we make sure that we're solving an issue? And then how do we make sure that our customer support is second to none?
Yep.
Originally, when I joined the company, the one requirement is, look, we can have the most amazing product, we can have the most amazing machine learning model, whatever it is. But if people don't want to do business with you, we have no company. And so one of the core competencies had to be customer or user experience, had to be customer every day, all day. And so, that's kind of been the biggest thread, depending upon the types of backgrounds that our team has had. It's, hey, you have to be interested in solving not just, hey, it's the customer. It's, hey, what about this individual? What about the individual who's using the drone? Or what about the individual who's using the data? How do we make sure that we're making their life better? How do we improve that? And that's where a lot of our customers have said we are consistently the strongest supplier because of that. I realize I got a little off topic. But
no, you're good. Yeah. It all comes back to the customer experience and driving that usability of the technology and the technologies that you're dealing with, whether they're artificial intelligence, machine learning, drone technology, just all the different types of data that you're collecting. At the end, if there isn't a customer for whom you can drive value, that sees value in what you're doing and can point to, boy, I'm really glad that I partnered with this company and actually utilized their technology, then you, to your point, you're just a bunch of engineers coming up with good ideas.
Absolutely. And speaking of the engineering team, I mean, we have a huge diversity of talent.
Yep.
We have a full autonomy department that's just there to make sure that the system flies as easily as possible, given off-the-shelf hardware. We have an iOS team that's there to make sure that the data is being captured correctly and displayed to the customer. We have a full back-end team that's going through and really more full-stack engineering to make sure that our web dashboard and our users are able to access all of this information. We have a quality assurance group that makes sure that we're not putting bad code. We're not putting a bad code out there.
Right.
Drones are not flying. In a way they shouldn't be.
Exactly.
We have a hardware and logistics team as well, and this all kind of knits together in addition to kind of the general administrative tasks of bringing up new sales, new finance, new marketing. But again, just all coming together as we all had to share the same goal, and it was creating people first problems.
Absolutely.
It was solving people first problems, not creating them.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or you can create them and then solve them.
Exactly.
I was once told that I'm the kind of person that will create a problem just to have something to work on. So I don't know if that's a good personality trait or not. But in either event, solving those problems obviously really, really important. And it really speaks to the wide variety of career opportunities that are available in STEM, are available in technology, and you're employing all of those at Gather AI. As we wrap up our time here together, Sean, and it's been a fascinating conversation. The work you guys are doing, the technology you're engaging with, the benefit you're providing to your customers and clients, really, really amazing. And I'm glad we had this time together. I want to ask you one final question. We pose it to a lot of our guests here on the Tech Ed Podcast. I want you to go back in time, maybe not as far back in time as I would have to go to be a 15-year-old, but you're that 15-year-old kid. You're the aspiring captain of your robotics team. You're thinking about mechanical engineering, maybe, or engineering in general as a career pathway. If you could go back and talk to that 15-year-old and give that individual one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
So I think I've been thinking about this quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest piece of advice that I'd give, and I'll explain it in a second, but really is if you don't know what to do, think about my grandfather. So my grandfather, Sun Kao Chun-sin, was incredibly humble. He has a PhD in electrical engineering. And moved from Thailand to Sweden. He was given an opportunity to go through and pursue his dreams, back in the 60s. Super kind, super outgoing, or super he was super welcoming.
Okay.
And so no matter what, he's always kind of been kind of a centering force for me in,
Sure.
okay, I know exactly, I know that if I'm going to be a good person, I'm working hard, I'm putting myself out there, I'm going to be okay. And I think that's always been kind of like, okay, what could be the best advice given to 15-year-old me,
Right.
that I would listen to is the other, there's
Right.
a whole bunch of advice I could give that I wouldn't listen to, but I think it said, hey, if you could have, at the back of your mind, what would Grandpa Soon do? That would be it.
That's awesome. And I love, we all have those influences in our lives. Obviously, your grandfather being a huge influence in yours. A PhD in engineering, and especially back then, that's certainly nothing to sneeze at. And think about the technology changes that he has seen over the course of his time here on Earth. Absolutely fascinating and great advice for not just the 15-year-old Sean Mitchell, but for any 15-year-old. Sean Mitchell is the Vice President of Customer Success for Gather AI, doing some really cool stuff with really cool technology. Sean, appreciate you spending some time with us.
Matt, always a pleasure, and thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Sounds great. Thank you.